Hey YouTube, I'm Tactical Fork back today to share with you some more specifics around elemental wells in Destiny 2. If you haven't checked it out yet, I suggest you watch my intro to elemental wells video linked in the top right corner here to get an overview of what elemental wells are and how they work if you're not completely familiar with the system. I'm not going to be taking much time in this video to cover the basics and assume you have some knowledge of wells already. One of the issues highlighted recently with elemental wells is specifically focused around Well of Tenacity and damage resistance. As I mentioned in my first wells video at the launch of the Witch Queen, we saw a major buff to Well of Tenacity to grant 50% damage resistance for the duration of the effect. But wait, Fork, how is this a problem? I'm so glad you asked. The problem is the fact that Bungie then severely nerfed our old friend Protective Light, a Charged Wtih Light mod that used to provide the same damage resistance for the same period of time, but has now been dropped down to only a 10% damage resist buff. The other and probably more important difference now is also how those mods were procced. Protective Light was great because the buff to damage resistance wouldn't activate until your shield broke. However, in the Elemental Well system, Well of Tenacity will activate as soon as you pick up a Void Well, which means you could be doing absolutely nothing or had just killed the last enemy in the room, and now all of a sudden you have 6 seconds of useless damage resistance. So what is the solution to this kind of problem? Protective Light is now much less desirable with only a 10% damage resistance as compared to the 50 of Well of Tenacity. In most PvE endgame activities, you really want to leverage the mod with more damage resistance, but the way it activates is certainly also a detriment. These are obvious balancing acts Bungie is playing with that provide certain risk-reward scenarios to Guardians who choose one system over the other. Protective Light still seems like the more accessible and targeted choice due to the way it procs, when you actually need it. Orb generation requires a mod like Kinetic Siphon now, but once you have that, you can equip something like taking charge to become Charged Wtih Light by picking up that orb. Next step is to obviously equip Protective Light to a piece of Void Armor and let it do its thing when your shield's cracked. You can see in this clip that as soon as that happens, I get the resist ×3 buff for 6 seconds. Granted, this doesn't tell you in game that it's only a 10% damage resistance now. So what about Well of Tenacity? It has similar starting requirements with at least a couple armor mods. You need to generate a Void Well. I'm using Reaping Wellmaker for that in my example. Then you need to equip Well of Tenacity to another piece of Void Armor. Another big difference between these systems: a Charged Wtih Light mods necessary for becoming Charged Wtih Light are slightly less stringent. Only Protective Light is element specific. You can get the rest of the way there with any armor piece you want. So now that we have that set up, let's go test. I start by dodging to activate Reaping Wellmaker, which allows my next kill to spawn a Void Elemental Well. Get the kill, pick up the well, and bam, my 6 seconds of damage resistance begin immediately. Cool? Maybe. Again, this is great if you really need the damage resistance when you pick up the well, but in some cases that might not be necessary. That was the beauty of the Charged Wtih Light system. There was no expiration time on the stacks of Charged Wtih Light you had on your Guardian. You could hold them until you needed to use them. Again, this is a clever little balancing trick that Bungie is playing with, and while I like them mixing things up, I also don't like taking 50% more arc damage from Alakul in the Lightblade GM.
What do you mean?
So how can we build on this well idea to potentially make Tenacity a more reliable source of damage resistance throughout an entire activity? With more well mods, of course. So we already have Reaping Wellmaker and Well of Tenacity. I'm also going to add into the mix Elemental Time Dilation. Elemental Well mods that grant you time-limited benefits, like Well of Tenacity, can now stack, increasing the duration of the effect for each copy of the mod you have equipped. This means that I can now add an additional Well of Tenacity mod to another piece of armor and extend the duration of my 50% damage resistance from 6 to 12 seconds. But wait, another mod joining the party? That's right, Seeking Wells. Elemental wells you create will move across the ground toward nearby players. I added this one into the example build to address some of the additional concerns between the Charged with Light system and elemental wells. When you get a kill and generate an elemental well, that well spawns where the enemy you killed died, rather than at times with orb generation, when I get a multi-kill, with a kinetic weapon and I have kinetic siphon on, that orb just spawns on me and I can immediately take advantage of any of the Charged with Light mods that I have equipped. I added in seeking wells to try and mimic what would happen when you cast your super and a bunch of orbs lay at your feet. Rather than that happening, we have a mod to drag them toward you. This is a very specific build that now, instead of requiring a single void mod and protective light, is now requiring you to have 2 void, 1 stasis, and 1 arc armor pieces equipped at the same time to get these benefits. But this is a way to maintain uptime on damage resistance that Well of Tenacity provides, while also lending the additional assist of extended time and seeking wells to bring elemental wells that are nearby toward you. If you're running an activity in a fire team, this can also help if your whole team is taking advantage of similar well creation mods for even more opportunities to pick up wells off the ground. Is it a perfect system? Definitely not. I do think the protective light nerf was a classic Bungie big swing in one direction, and will hopefully be tuned back up a bit in subsequent seasons to rebalance things. Time will tell, but for now, this is just one example of how to get elemental wells to do a little more work for you if you can't live, literally, like getting melted immediately in every GM, without that 50% damage reduction buff. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it helpful in your understanding of how some of these well mods can synergize together. Please consider giving the video a like, subscribe to my channel for more Destiny 2 content. If you want to see this kind of stuff happen live, I also stream over on Twitch every week. The link to my channel down below in the video description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.